Hey, I know in the grand scheme of things I haven't been away for very long at all, but I am certainly glad to be back. I know that I had kind of alluded on my community tab in the past that I was hoping to do a final push for December, which I definitely was, but even at that time, I think I wasn't being totally honest with myself about some of the realities of my life, and that my aunt passed away about a week before Christmas. And we got a pretty bad diagnosis at the end of October, and I wanted to believe we would have to Christmas, and we did not. So early December, I rushed home to spend what moments I could with her and with my family. And the rest of the month I have been spending time with family and kind of just working through my grief. We already lost my grandpa earlier this year. If you watch my Bridgerton season 2 videos, you may have noticed a bunch of flowers in the background. Those were not acquired for any kind of Bridgerton aesthetic. Those were sympathy flowers from my friends. So it was already going to be a tough Christmas, and then this happened, and it moved very quickly. And I don't want to dwell on the sad by any means, but that is where I've been. And this also kind of has me in both a reflective mood and a looking ahead mood, because it definitely is a reminder that tomorrow isn't promised, and we will leave it at that. So I'm still planning on wrapping up kind of my best and maybe a couple of my worst reads, but I just haven't been in the headspace to really do that justice. So we're gonna leave that for a little bit in the future. Not too far, of course. We still want it to feel relevant. But I have been seeing a lot of people talking about their 2023 goals, their reading challenge goals, all of that. And I think this is also kind of wrapped up in the discourse that we've been seeing, and I'm not gonna dwell too much on this discourse, don't worry, about how much someone reads in a year, which also kind of goes back to my discussion that I had a month or two ago about keeping up with the Joneses in the book community, because these kinds of discussions and this discourse is kind of cyclical for those of us who've been around the block a couple of times, but it is still conversations that people are interested in having. So it becomes, what am I looking for in my reading life in 2023? The last couple of years I have been reading less for me. Still over 100 books a year, but I was like right out of college reading 250 books a year easy, and there was one year that I read over 300. But that was kind of an unusual circumstance type thing. I was in a role at my job where I could listen to audiobooks all day. And I can't listen to audiobooks at slower speeds because as much as I try very hard to keep a normal speaking cadence and speed here in this space, in my real life, I often can kind of run with an idea and speak very quickly because my brain just keeps a moving. So it's finding that nice balance between it being fast enough that I can pay attention, because if it's too slow, I lose things, but not being so fast that I lose things. So that was kind of a sweet spot that I no longer have. But because of that, I am very aware of how people can slip reading into lots of pieces of their day. And so I've been seeing on Book Talk and migrating over to Twitter as well, some conversation about, kind of the sweet spot of how much someone reads in a year. You're seeing people kind of judging people for reading too much, people saying that you're not reading deeply enough if you've read a whole lot, or there's just a lot of kind of friction, I think, and I think it really gets back to, again, people judging themselves against others and feeling lesser in some way. As I said in my Keeping Up with the Joneses video, if your whole identity is wrapped up in reading, there can be some real tension or friction in how you view yourself as a reader, and humans kind of naturally create hierarchies. I do not have a sociology degree, so take that with a grain of salt as you should take everything I say with a grain of salt. So all that to say, it's got me thinking again about how I'm framing my own reading goals, because I've talked here before about the fact that because I have been kind of declining in my number of books read the last couple of years, that I've kind of been reassessing what I set my goal at, because I don't want it to be an undue source of anxiety for me, which it can easily become. But it is also hard because I know how much I've read in the past. I have those numbers kind of in my bones, so to speak, and if not in my bones, in a log online. So it's hard not to judge my current self against my past self and feel like I am not succeeding in some way. And succeeding I use kind of loosely. It's not so much I think I am less of a reader if I am reading less, but there is a sense of regret for all that I haven't gotten to. This year, 2022, I have unquestionably read some fantastic books, but I've also found myself feeling somewhat uninformed in some places. I read pretty broadly, I think. I mean, there are genres that I don't read in as deeply for sure. Lately, mystery and thriller. I really don't read Westerns much at all, though how popular are Westerns anymore? I don't know. I may someday talk about kind of the genres that I don't gravitate toward as much, but you also probably have a sense of that just from the videos I'm posting. But even with those exceptions, I still feel like I haven't read as deeply in a lot of the areas I do love to read in. Historical fiction, I've read barely any of this year. I haven't read nearly enough fantasy, I don't think. I've read probably the least amount of young adult I've ever read. And even as a romance reader, I've had some imposter syndrome that I've been fighting against this year, because I'm not reading as voraciously as some people, especially on like TikTok. I tend to gravitate toward historical romance more than contemporary romance, though I clearly read contemporary as well. And because it is such a fast-moving genre where so many books are published, I just don't feel as knowledgeable as I should be at times in it. I like to be able to pull out recommendations at the drop of a hat, and I just haven't been reading as broadly as I'm used to. That being said, I'm still reading over 100 books a year. That is nothing to sneeze at, and I'm not pretending it is. But when I was used to reading 200 books a year easy, it is an adjustment. It doesn't make me any less of a reader though, and I am still enjoying what I read. I just really enjoy being able to place what I'm reading, situate it amongst its contemporaries, be able to compare it to things that have come before, notice trends, things like that. And I'm not saying that I'm not doing any of those things by any means, but I'm babbling now. So in assessing all of this, I've been thinking about this goal, right? How am I going to kind of conceptualize it this year? I do not think I can be the person that sets a goal of one and is mentally able to think of that as one. I have friends that really succeed that way. I am honest with myself and I don't think that's gonna happen, especially because I'm really still gonna focus, hopefully, as long as nothing else goes completely off the rails, on Feature Fridays. And as I've said before, I really try to feature new titles, frontlist titles, or at least things released within that year in Feature Fridays, because I know how important that kind of span of time of being a new book is to publishers, to authors, to the success of that book and the future of an author's career in many ways. So I still plan to read a significant amount of new releases, but I also want to make sure I'm not ignoring backlist titles that have fallen through the cracks in previous years as well, because I'm never going to be able to read everything I want in a singular year. So things definitely carry over, and it's easy for them to kind of get shuffled to the back once they've kind of missed their moment, and I don't necessarily want that to happen. So I think that I have been a little bit better, especially the last couple years, of folding in some more backlist titles. I haven't been perfect by any means, but am definitely trying to make that happen. And I think this year I'm going to work really hard to kind of read some of my own backlist that have kind of piled up, whether it's the books behind me every video or some that are on another shelf, trying to tackle some of that. So I may feature some of that as well to kind of hold me to account, to share these books that I'm excited about, even if they're past their new period, because it's always time to find and discover books. And I think that Book Talk has showed us in the last couple of years that there is the possibility of kind of repopularizing backlist titles for sure. So I want to get through some of that backlist backlog for sure. I think I'm gonna try try being the keyword here, to slow some of my physical purchasing down, at least through potentially Indie Bookstore Day. That's really an ambitious goal because that's not till the end of April, but I have been trying to use the library more. I'm really good at the holds there. So it may be kind of working through the library and then also my kind of physical backlog. But also then I don't know that mentally I'm going to count books on Kobo that are on sale in that. And I'm not saying I'm gonna go on a book buying ban by any means, but I am gonna try to be a little bit more intentional because I've realized that I have very limited space and I don't want to potentially create anxiety by filling that space with unread books and then they're just kind of staring me down. They're comforting sometimes. Sometimes I'll just go pick them up and page through them without actually reading anything, just kind of that tactile experience. But knowing that they're there, being able to see them can be a stressor sometimes. So I want to work through some of those books and get them read so they're not kind of haunting me for sure. I additionally potentially want to read more in things like poetry, short stories for sure. I really enjoy short stories and there were many collections this year that I was really looking forward to that just kind of got shuffled down the list of my priorities in terms of my reading, and I think that that's kind of a bummer. I think that I potentially made some bad calls there because short story collections can be harder to talk about independently sometimes, like for a feature Friday, if they're not something like Vagabonds or How High We Go in the Dark, where you've got this really strong thematic thread, so much so that they're categorized as a novel, but we've still got these works that are incredibly exciting and I want to read. So I want to catch up on my short stories. I want to make sure that I'm still keeping a robust selection of nonfiction in the rotation. That is usually easier for me to get through on audiobook, and this year in particular, I've noticed I've had less ability to kind of focus on audiobooks, so I'm hoping to kind of get back into the swing with that, especially through nonfiction. One of my book clubs tries to make an effort to go back and forth between fiction and nonfiction every month, so I'm guaranteed roughly 6 nonfiction books, but that's not enough, wanting to hit one a month. I also want to kind of familiarize myself with more poetry, pick some more of that up again, though I'm not pretending I will be an expert by any means. And I would like to make an effort to prioritize some more genres that I love that have kind of fallen on back burners in the last couple of years, particularly historical fiction, and I've noticed myself reading less young adult, but that is also just probably because I am getting older. That's fine. But things like historical fiction, I think I just need to be more intentional. The kind of World War II, even World War I era books were kind of at the forefront for, I would say, the last decade, and have taken up a lot of the marketing space and visual space and kind of buzz in a lot of spaces online. And then recently, even more modern historical fiction, like anything in the 1900s, I would say, though I do enjoy Gilded Age stuff, like anything like through the 20s, basically anything before we have that real break with World War I and that kind of push into modernism. I get the movements, but I kind of gravitate toward things that are before World War I personally. So it's been harder to find those books sometimes because we have been seeing more focus on the World War II books. That being said, that's also kind of an excuse because things this year like Joan and The Marriage Portrait that I was really looking forward to, I haven't gotten to yet. So I need to prioritize historical fiction again. And I would like to be reading some more young adult, both because it is an art form that I have really enjoyed. I think that there is a really interesting craft to it in terms of the succinctness of the storytelling and the way that it is structured. I really enjoy seeing how authors play with that space and those feelings and everything at play in the young adult space and emotional landscape. So I definitely would like to kind of dip my toes back in and get a broader sense of the kind of modern landscape, because I don't think I've been reading as extensively the last couple of years, so I don't think I have as firm a grasp on what is popular. And I think I probably started falling off a little bit when thrillers started dominating the space, because I don't gravitate toward thrillers immediately. I read thrillers, but they're not necessarily my first pick, so maybe that had something to do with it, but I don't know. Part of the reason I would like to read a little bit more young adult is because I am within spitting distance of having 1,000 young adult books logged since I started digitally logging books back in I want to say 2007-ish, so that would be great. And even though I started digitally recording in, I want to say 2007, I joined Goodreads back basically when it launched, I'm pretty sure. The same year it launched anyway. I saw it in a magazine in the library and signed up immediately, but I don't remember exact timelines. What I do remember is that I had already been keeping physical logs for school, like in English class, of my self-selected reading. So I have imported a lot of that. The dates just don't necessarily line up. So I definitely have more things I want to be reading. The problem is that's always the case. I always have more I want to be reading. I've kind of alluded to some of my discontent with my reading life is feeling like I'm not as well versed as I used to be, or I'm not reading widely enough. So of course I want to be reading more, but I also don't want to be translating that into pressure on myself. And it's not a pressure that will make me necessarily like speed through books or not enjoy books or not be able to live in the moment of a book, but there will always be that kind of thought in the back of my head, right? Of what am I not reading right now? So for me, in terms of setting goals, it's kind of about balance, especially because I am definitely a mood reader, and I have been kind of charting out some of my reading a little bit more over the last couple of years, particularly since I started this channel, especially in relation to things like Feature Friday. I'm picking up what I'm in the mood for, but definitely prioritizing some of those most recent reads. And because I'm a mood reader and I'm just not good at being told what to read, I don't want to add that pressure to myself in other ways. Like, I have turned down invitations to more book clubs because I am honest with myself and know that I am kind of at my capacity at being told what to read per month with the ones I'm already in. And even with the ones I'm already in, when we are reading a book that I've already read, I am often elated because then I at least have some working knowledge if I don't get to it. I am currently reading both of my book club books. One I haven't started yet. It is a reread, thank goodness. The other I am listening to, and both of my, well, no, one book club is next weekend, so I should be okay there. And the other book club is like 3 or 4 days away. Luckily that is Romance Book Club and I've already read the book, so I should be able to refresh that very quickly. But again, I just don't want to add undue pressure. So for me, I hope that 2023 is kind of finding a balance of revisiting stories and forms and genres and tropes that I know I love and that bring me joy, but that I kind of lost touch with the last couple of years, but also kind of stepping back from the pressure of numbers, which I'm actually honestly really proud of myself for the last couple of years. I've been working really hard not to put pressure on that number for myself because I recognize how easy it is for me to kind of gamify it and make it a competition purely with myself, but in a way that is unnecessarily stressful, especially as my life has significantly changed. I am in a job that requires a lot more brain power. I am working to really foster my friendships and make sure as an introvert that I don't just disappear for months at a time. So there is a balance to everything. And of course, YouTube cuts into reading time, but I value this space that we're carving out, this community that we're slowly building, and also just having a space to talk about these books, to still be excited about books without just bothering my friends all the time. Here my friends can opt in to the bother. So I guess all of that is to say I don't really have firm 2023 reading goals. I don't think I can sit here and say I want to read one nonfiction a month and one poetry collection a month and one short story collection a month, which I'm not gonna lie to you, has entered my head, right? That is a thought that is coming from somewhere. But if I set that goal, it's going to be about fulfilling the metric rather than kind of prioritizing stories I'm excited about. And I just want to make sure that I'm prioritizing stories I'm excited about. And I, of course, want to continue to improve reading diversely across a broad spectrum of categories, whether it is author, community, form, content, all kinds of things, because I want to continue to expose myself to as many different kinds of stories and points of view and concepts as possible. So I guess while I will set the kind of tangible, physical of sorts, it's not physical, goal as 100 books as I did this year, and I hope to read more. I really do, because this year I think I'll end just shy of 120, which is down from last year, and I think this year may be my lowest reading year since I want to say 2011 if I remember correctly, which at the time I was still in college. And again, one, I recognize that that is still a very high number, and two, we're trying not to chase numbers here. We're enjoying what we read. I just know that there are many, many things that I want to read and that I will enjoy, and I'm trying to get to all of it, which is impossible. It won't happen. But we're gonna try. We're gonna try our best. So I think this year, as every year, in theory, right, it's just gonna be about finding the joy in what I'm reading, the excitement in terms of character, worlds, ideas, what have you. As I mentioned before, I do want to continue to push myself and revisit things I've loved in the past. That being said, I think I've reread more the last couple years, and I do see that continuing in some ways in the next year, especially as we're looking at a lot of page to screen kind of translations. I will definitely want to be able to look at it in relation to the original text and need to refresh myself, because again, my memory isn't what it once was, and I'm not remembering things in as much detail all of the time as I would like, which I guess is a blessing and a curse, because for those beloved stories that you always kind of wish you could read for the first time again, I can on some level read it for the first time. So I don't know, this has been a lot of babbling, I apologize, but I am very much, as always, looking forward to reading in 2023, and I would be very, very interested to hear what you kind of have on your horizon for reading in 2023. If you are setting goals, strict like numbers goals, if you're looking to read more that way, if you're kind of pulling back from that, if you have specific genre goals, or if you're doing specific reading challenges or what have you, what you think reading in 2023 is going to look like for you and what you're excited about for reading in 2023. So let me know, because you know, we're turning over a new leaf here. And while I feel like I should be excited every year at that kind of reset of the count, I never am, because it feels like it's wiped out all of the progress I've had from the year before in terms of reading goals and reading challenges, I should say. So we'll see how I feel when that clock ticks over at midnight on the 1st and we're starting fresh from 1 again. But it's also a very exciting time because we've got a whole new year of books and reading. So let me know what your new year of books and reading is gonna look like, or what you're hoping it's gonna look like. And also, I wanna take this opportunity, especially if you're still here, to just thank you for 2022. I know that I'm a small channel, a small community, but I am also so incredibly grateful for everyone being here, because as small as the community is, it is significantly larger than I ever anticipated. So thank you for being here in 2022, for being excited about books with me, talking books with me, engaging, and I look forward to us continuing to talk reading, reading life, books, what have you in 2023, and hopefully have a lot of fun along the way. So let me know what you're thinking, how you're feeling about the end of 2022 and the beginning of 2023 in terms of your reading life. But above all, thanks for hanging out. Read something good. Like, subscribe, comment, engage, you know, that whole shebang if you feel like it. And yeah,